Evening and welcome to a very special edition of Sports Corner. My name's Ralph Williams. If you're new to the show tonight, we're having a very special draft summit. My guest is Scott Morganroth from the South Florida Tribune and Joe Kuglis, our local draft expert. He's been on with me before, both on my podcast and on my TV edition. This is my third show tonight, gentlemen. I had my TV show at 6 tonight, and then at 8, I had my show on Blog Talk Radio with Mark Mancini, and now we're doing this one together here. This is it for me tonight. I'm showed out.
Yeah.
So, anyway, first, we're going to get started with Scott real quick. What's going on down in Florida? How was the draft? How do you think the draft was for Miami, Tampa, and the Jags?
Well, for Miami, they only had four picks. So what would you expect? Tyreek Hill was considered your actual, first round day. I mean, there wasn't
Right.
anything. He had four picks as far as the Tampa Bay Bucks. Well, Trayvon Walker. I was actually they were up in the air between Trayvon Walker and they were up in the air with Aiden Hutchinson. They went with the Southeastern Conference product. And me being a Detroit native, I was very happy to see Aiden Hutchinson land with the Lions. So it worked out
Oh,
pretty
that's
well. So,
okay.
I mean, like anything else, they're building a new thing with Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke as a combination. And the Jaguars are in year two. Of course, good riddance to Urban Meyer. Now we'll see if Doug Peterson can get things going. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, limited draft capital. They're mainly focusing on veterans as well. So one team obviously had no draft capital. The other one, not so much. And the other one, a lot.
Yeah, it seems like Miami had to give away a lot to get Tyreek Hill, and you know what? To get one guy and not have any draft capital for a new coach, that's not good because I mean I saw some of the other new coaches make bold moves like Brian DeBoe up at New York Giants. He went and got draft capital because they're having salary cap issues up there. He knows what he had to get. So I mean, and Tampa Bay, of course, they're going to line themselves up with veterans. They have Todd Bowles as their head coach now, and things like that. And the Jags, I think Doug Peterson's going to do a good job there. Of course, when you pick first, you always have a good draft. You should have a good draft, not all the time, but you should. So we'll see. We'll get your thoughts, Scott, on the rest of the teams in the draft. Joe, what did you think of the Steelers draft?
So I thought the Steelers, I would have graded them around an A minus. I thought they got everything that they needed in terms of uh, positions that they were focusing on. I was disappointed. The minus comes in because I don't think they addressed the offensive line at all. I think they did in free agency when they went out and they signed Daniels from Chicago and Mason Cole from the Vikings, and then they extended Chooks to play right tackle, and I think they're pretty comfortable with Dan Moore on left tackle. Whether that works out for them, I honestly don't know. I would have liked to have seen them address offensive line. I think they addressed defensive line with Leal in the third round, which was an interesting pick because he's not really the Steelers like he has some positional flexibility. He played inside and outside at A&M, and I think that allows him to maybe focus on like his three technique for the Steelers. That might have to put on a little bit more weight to play that position, but I think they see him as an athletic Cam Hayward, the way Cam was 10 years ago when he was drafted, and so I think they're rolling the dice with him in the third round. I think he's got the pedigree to do it, but in terms of in the trenches, they kind of stayed away from that and went to sort of the skill positions. First over, or in the first round with Kenny Pickett. And I think that they think they've got their man, whether they do or not. And I'm a Pitt fan, as you can tell. And also, I went to Michigan, so go blue with Aiden Hutchinson. I heard that earlier. I was happy he landed with the Detroit Lions as well. But Kenny Pickett, they were looking for their franchise quarterback, and I think they think they've got him. I also think that they were surprised that they were going to get him. That's why they went out and signed Trubisky, and I think that creates an interesting dynamic in terms of what we'll see, in preseason and whether or not Kenny starts. And I think he has to. I mean, you draft a quarterback in the first round, you got to start him. So I don't know what that does to Trubisky. And then, the second round pick with George Pickens, the upside on that guy, the UGA product, if he doesn't blow out his ACL, I think he may go in the first round. He could be an AJ Green type player. I know that a lot of folks have, made comps to AJ Green for him, but we'll see. Coming off of this injury, I know that they tested him out when Tomlin went south, and sort of kicked the tires with all the Georgia players and spent some time down there looking at him, and they seem to be confident about it. Kevin Colbert seemed to be confident about it. And then later in the draft, I mean, it's rolls of the dice. I mean, the Calvin Austin pick. Again, I know they needed to take 2 receivers in this draft, and they got a guy. And he's short, but he's stout and he's fast. So, he might have some upside there. I mean, I've heard people also say the downside is, did they draft the next Dre Archer? And I'm hoping not. I hope that he kind of plays through it. And then I think the Connor Haywood play was a nice little tip of the cap to Cam here. I'm not sure where he fits in the Steelers scheme of things. I mean, he was a running back under D'Antonio. He became an H-back under Mel Tucker. He's kind of big. He doesn't run that fast. He's not a real tight end. He's too slow to be running back kicks in the NFL. Like, I just think he's a tweener in the greatest sense of the word.
Plus, he's Cam's brother too. That's another story.
He's got talent, right? He's got talent. They'll figure out a way to use him, but I don't know where he really fits in on this team. And they went out and got a kick returner in free agency. They have Derek Watt at fullback. They've got a decent tight end with Freiermuth, who could only get better. I don't know where
Gentry and Radar. Yeah,
like I don't know where they play him. So we'll see what the Steelers want to do with him. And and I think their last pick, Mark Robinson from Ole Miss, is just a roll of the dice, right? He's a 7th round linebacker. They didn't renew Bush. I don't think that signals Bush's.
Well, look at Buddy Johnson. They didn't use him last year. He was a late round pick last year.
Yeah,
so they hardly used him at all.
We'll see what they do. Right. You know what I mean? And I think the Steelers have it's strange to say it because they're always in the hunt, but they might be by the end of the season the 4th place team in the AFC. I mean, I don't think that will happen because the Steelers never are the 4th place team in the AFC. But that said, it's hard to look at the Bengals or the Ravens and say that the Steelers are better than them. And I think Cleveland's more comparable at this point. But with Deshaun Watson coming there, that was quote unquote their draft, if you want to look at it. And it's hard to say what Kenny does, and how he pans out here. So, it's TBD.
Okay, Scott, what's your grades on the 3 teams down there plus the Detroit Lions? What grades do you give?
Well, I've heard the Lions getting a B+ from a lot of people. I think the Miami Dolphins are really basically an incomplete. You only have 4 picks.
Right.
I haven't heard a lot as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are concerned. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would say about a B+, A-.
Okay.
So somewhere around there. Again, they were able to address the defensive side of the ball with Trayvon Walker. Up until that time, they thought for sure that it was you could go either way with Hutchinson or Trayvon Walker, but I think it was ironic how it worked out for both sides. A few things that I'm really intrigued about, and I got to say, I do like the Kenny Pickett.
Good. Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of the Steelers draft.
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, again, you're talking about Pickens, the wide receiver. Here's what you have to understand about this draft. Okay. There were 13 receivers selected in the first 2 rounds of the 2022 NFL Draft, which is tied with the 2020 NFL Draft for the most in the first 2 rounds, while 17 receivers were selected in the first 3 rounds, and that was tied with 2007 and 1994. So if that doesn't tell you guys that where this league is going from, I don't know what really will.
Right. Right. Yeah. There were 40 wide receivers. They had so many wide receivers in this draft, Scott and Joe. They had to have a top 40 instead of a top 20, for the receivers. Because when I went to look in the draft publications to find out, they all had 40 names instead of 20, where everybody else had 20. You see, or I mean,
Right.
all the other positions had 20. The running backs, everything else, and the running backs too were up to 25. And then the rest of the positions were at top 20, and the centers were at top 10 because they didn't have that many centers. So, there were different grades come from different angles, different TV shows, different media people about what the Steelers did. I thought personally that the Steelers, I wasn't real uh, satisfied with the draft because I wanted to see them get an extra offensive lineman in the draft. Now they signed two of them as undrafted free agents. They signed a kid from Duquesne, which is locally here, and then they signed another. They signed a guard named Chris Adams. He's from Alabama. So you sign somebody from Alabama, I don't have a problem with it because Alabama has good athletes, and they wouldn't be in national championship hunts if they didn't. And Georgia and Michigan, just to name a few. Cincinnati had a lot of players drafted, So I think that the Steelers did adequate. I expected more defensive tackle. I expected more offensive line, especially after they signed that free agent from Dallas, the safety. Because they were talking about going in that direction too. And then they lost three wide receivers unexpectedly. When we lost Ray McLeod, Juju Smith-Schuster, and James Washington. And they just got Miles Boykin from Baltimore, and then the two receivers they got in the draft. Now, the little guy that they got in the fourth round or in the third round from Memphis, I think he's a good wide receiver. He's a fast kid. He's small. He's fast. And I think Matt Canada wants to use him in his jet sweep setups, where he has the wide receiver come across the huddle and the quarterback hand it off and he runs straight up the middle. That play was used several times. But they're calling this the Matt Canada draft because our offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, now gets to run his offense since Ben's gone, because he was running a Ben offense for Ben. So now that Ben's gone, and then also the death of Dwayne Haskins kind of threw the Steelers off too. I think if Dwayne Haskins was still here, and I think that if we didn't lose three receivers, I think we would have stockpiled offensive linemen and defensive tackles. That's what I think we would have done.
Well, let me
your
ask
thoughts?
you, let me ask you this. First of all, you have 15 Georgia guys selected in the draft to begin with. So
Right.
I don't know what draft it really was. Was it Georgia? Had 15 players in the draft. So there's enough good players to feed the NFL when you talk about how good that Georgia championship really was.
Right,
right. And to me, when you look at a lot of different scenarios about where a lot of these players ended up going, even the Green Bay Packers stockpiled their defense, grabbing a couple of Georgia guys on the back end of the first round when many people assumed that they were going to go out there and take wide receivers, and yet they traded up to get a wide receiver themselves in the in fact, Christian Watson, North Dakota State, Green Bay, 34th overall. So,
right.
There's so many interesting scenarios. The one thing I've been doing over the last week or so is I've talked about the 6 quarterbacks that were drafted immediately. Malik Willis, I thought, was a pretty interesting pick by the Tennessee Titans, and he's obviously in Ryan Tannehill's head.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ryan Tannehill needed a little therapy to digest that 19-16 loss. We just talked about Kenny Pickett, who I think is great. And the one thing I can say about Pickett is the people in Pittsburgh don't have to feel bad that Dan Marino slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because you ended up keeping the local kid home, and it wouldn't matter if gas prices in Pittsburgh were $10 a gallon.
A gallon.
All you have to do is go walk from one end of the facility to the other, and you found your man.
Right.
Matt Corral is an interesting pick for the Carolina Panthers, coming from Lane Kiffin. And that's where a lot of my focus has been. I called it the underwhelming QB class of 2022. Sam Howell could very well unseat Carson Wentz if Carson doesn't play well. Desmond Ridder, you're talking about a Cincinnati player.
Oh, Desmond Ridder, I liked him. Yeah,
out of Atlanta. Yeah. And then, of course, my favorite one is Bailey Zappi out of Western Kentucky. How the heck did he land in New England?
In New England,
except for
yeah.
trade
Well,
bait.
you know what,
Holding
Bill
up.
Bill Belichick, Scott and Joe. Bill Belichick is very good at drafting these kids from small schools and late round picks. He likes them. He says they're hungry. He likes late round picks, and so Belichick always drafts well. And they're saying this Kenny Pickett could be a Mac Jones. That's what they're saying about Kenny Pickett. Joe, what's your thoughts about what we're talking about, the overall draft, AFC North, that kind of thing? I think Baltimore beefed up. I think Cleveland kind of, they gave away a lot of their draft, but they cut Chris Blewett from Pitt and drafted a kicker from LSU to take his place. Cincinnati I think they did pretty well for themselves. If I'm Mike Tomlin, I wouldn't make comments that I'm not worrying about the other teams in the AFC North. He better, because I got to tell you what, they drafted better than he did, I think.
Well, I think the Baltimore Ravens arguably had the best draft of the entire year, right? I mean, I
Right.
think they got Kyle Hamilton to fall to them. I think even though Houston moved up a couple of times in front of them to draft Alabama players, they still got an Alabama player later in the draft. But it's hard when you've got when they moved the way they did. They got Hamilton and Linderbaum, which addressed their center issue. And then in the second round, David Ajabo from Michigan falls, who would have been a first round pick. They get second round pick, first round talent because of his Achilles tear. And then in the third round, they grabbed Travis Jones, which is one of those guys that, Ralph, you and I talked about last time.
Yeah, I wanted Travis Jones with the Steelers. I had him on my list as their number one pick, but
Yeah,
I didn't expect them to lose three wide receivers since you know what I mean, and I
yeah.
didn't
Like,
expect
I don't think it's hard.
Kenny Pickett to fall to him.
Well, unless you have it, in my opinion, unless you have a generational talent or someone that flashes generational talent like Jordan Davis, it's hard to pick a nose tackle in the first round, right?
Right.
And and I think that the Steelers learned that they can do that a couple of years ago with Hargraves. They got away from it. They were able to get
Casey Hampton, Joel Steed, they've
Yeah,
had a few
yeah,
of them.
they had some guys, and and I think that you could wait, and Baltimore waited, and they drafted him right in front of the Steelers in the third round. The Steelers, eventually, I mean, obviously they went with Leal, and they liked the pick, but the Ravens, notwithstanding their 27 picks in the fourth round, or what they did there, I don't know how those guys make the team. I don't know why they didn't move some of those. I know some are compensatory and you can't trade them and things like that, but I thought that they did really well before themselves. I think, like we mentioned earlier, I mean, Cleveland's draft was limited because of the Deshaun
Sean
Watson,
Watson.
but they were able to
Right.
pick up some depth there. I mean, there's a couple of guys, and I like David Bell, the receiver from
Yeah.
Purdue. I mean,
Yeah,
he's not a fast guy,
yeah.
but he's a guy that boxes out, uses his body well, always is a playmaker, seems to be around the ball, makes the big plays. He reminds you of sort of like kind of a Hines Ward in that respect, where you can count on him in every play. He's not going to beat you deep, but he'll get you the first down. He'll fight for every inch of the field. I think they did a pretty good job there, and I think they've done a pretty good job with Perion Winfrey, who was their fourth round draft pick, who was a defensive tackle that could have been one of those guys that went to this. I know the Steelers are looking there, and so the Browns did well with the limited draft capital that they really had, and then Cincinnati was an interesting draft for me. I mean, they franchised one safety, and then in the first round they picked Dax Hill from Michigan to fill in at that second safety spot. Then they went out and addressed their cornerback position with Britt Taylor in the second round from Nebraska. And I think that there's a lot to be said about what they've done in free agency already with basically a brand new offensive line. So,
Well, they needed that because of the Super Bowl. They lost on the line of scrimmage on offense in the Super Bowl. Cincinnati I knew the Rams were going to eat their lunch because I said their offensive line. I was on a podcast with Luther Dupree and Smoking Jim Frazier and Claudia Rosano on the Steel City Sports World, and we had a discussion. We did a pre-Super Bowl show, and I said I don't think their offensive line can hold up to the Rams, and I was right. And I said Aaron Donald and all them, they're going to eat him alive. So Burrows was on the run too, just like Ben was.
Yeah.
But the only difference was Cincinnati made it to the Super Bowl.
Well, let me point one thing out, though, that would
Go ahead,
probably
Scott.
help you out a little bit, and that's this.
Sure.
David Ojabo played for Jim Harbaugh. John Harbaugh is a head coach, obviously, for the
Yeah,
Ravens.
yeah.
And Mike McDonald, who was his defensive coordinator with Michigan, is now the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. So if that
Ravens,
is
yeah.
enough familiarity, I don't know what the heck is.
What
So
was?
I
Yeah,
think that'll
exactly.
ultimately become a sleeper pick in Baltimore once you
Yeah.
get past the injury issues. So, let's face the reality. Anytime a Harbaugh drafts another player from a Harbaugh, it's not like you don't have firsthand information. And by the way, Jim's a pretty good coach, just so you
Oh
know.
yeah, he is. Jim
And, and,
Harbaugh is. Yeah.
and of course, we know they faced each other in the Super Bowl and the
In the Super
Harbaugh
Bowl,
Bowl as
right?
well. So, I think another pick that really intrigues me when I'm looking at the Miami Dolphins a little bit, and this will shed a little bit of light, is they ended up drafting quarterback Skylar Thompson from Kansas State, from Tennessee. And the reason why is he's a very mobile quarterback. So you got to wonder, you guys are talking about Tua Tagovailoa, right? You
Right,
don't know
right.
whether you're going to have a late round quarterback that could ultimately make a difference down the road. So is this a make or break year for Tua Tagovailoa? Yeah, and when you got another
It
quarterback
is.
in the room as well,
And you have a new coach who's looking to do well because he's a new coach. But I,
absolutely.
he has to make a name for himself. He knows he was hired, as a new coach, and nowadays these owners, unlike the Steelers, of course, a lot of these owners are pulling the plug real fast on these new coaches. Look at Houston; they pulled the plug on Dave Cawley after one season, didn't even give him a chance. And I mean, in some other places,
Oh,
uh,
that
you
was
know, uh,
absurd. That was,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
And then you brought in Lovey Smith. Okay, nothing against Lovey Smith,
Oh, yeah,
but David Culley got the biggest hose job I've ever seen in my life for a guy. He really
yeah,
did.
yeah. He did. And Lovey Smith, no knock against him, but he's just. I think it's time for him to retire. I mean, he didn't do well in Illinois when he was there, and then he was in Tampa. He did okay. And then, but he won one Super Bowl in Chicago, and he wore out his welcome there. So, Lovey Smith with Houston, we'll see. That's
And I
all I
believe
can
he
say.
went to the Super Bowl. I don't know if he won the one
He
in
did. He
Chicago.
went to the Super Bowl. He didn't win it. It was
Right,
him
I believe
against
it was
Dungy.
right,
Yeah, in
right,
Indianapolis. Yeah, and Dungy won that Super Bowl.
correct.
So that was his first Super Bowl too, because when he was in Tampa, um, John Gruden took over in Tampa and won the Super Bowl with his players. Remember, they all said that, down there in Tampa.
And I've been
So.
preaching that for as long as you can ever imagine. But you want to talk
Hey,
about the fact that John Gruden should be sending Tony Tunji a
thank
Christmas
you,
card.
cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I think so. And that almost reminds me of when Jimmy Johnson won a Super Bowl, and Barry Switzer got a gift from Jimmy Johnson. So we
Yeah,
can talk about
exactly. Yeah,
all
yeah.
generous moves
Hey,
there. So
hey, you know what they're saying here? Tomlin hasn't won a Super Bowl yet with his own players. The last one he won against Arizona was with the remainder of Cowher's players, because you had a bunch of Cowher players that were still on the team at the time. So I mean, that's all the time. But and from what I'm hearing now, Tomlin's not. They don't think we'll ever win a Super Bowl with him
well, you know
again.
what, though? I'm giving Tomlin a pass. I don't care. He's one of the best coaches in football anyway. So, you know what? The
Yeah.
fact that he's got a Super Bowl to me and he runs a great ship over there, you know what? To
Yeah.
me,
Hey, look at Bill Cowher.
Tomlin,
He only won one Super Bowl, and he only went to two, and he won one. At least he was 1-1. He had the best record, or he made the most Pro Bowl appearances, and he was the most Pro Bowl winning coach. He lost a lot of AFC Championship games. And but I mean, he didn't lose them. Sometimes the players lost some of them. He had a couple of assistants. Chan Gailey made bad play calls in 1997 in that AFC Championship game against Denver. I thought we should have blew Denver out. We blew them out in the regular season, and then come to play them in the playoffs, and we end up in a dogfight because Chan Gailey play calls were horrible, and it was only me and a guy named Guy Junker, who just retired from the media here after 45 years. We were the only two people in the entire media at the time that said that it was Chan Gailey, and finally now, looking back at it, everybody's starting to come around. Well, Ralph and Guy, they were right. You know what I mean? It was Chan Gailey who blew that game for making a bad play. So not all of it's Cowher's fault. But I mean, it falls on him because he's the head coach. and
Well,
that's what happens.
I'll take Chuck Noll. Okay, I'll take Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin all day long. So I'm not going there.
Yeah,
You guys
I
tend to
mean,
forget you had one of the greatest
yeah,
defensive coaches ever
yeah,
in
he
Dick
did.
LeBeau,
Yeah,
by the way, who was pretty good.
right, right, and he had some good offensive coordinators. Mike Mularkey. He had. I liked Mike Mularkey. I liked Ken Wisenhunt. I mean, he had some good offensive coordinator. Chan Gailey until that game. Ron Earhart when he first
Right.
got started. Ron Earhart, who coached under Parcells. So, what's your thoughts on all what we're talking
Oh
about,
yeah,
Joe?
Bruce Arians too, if I understand
Yeah,
correctly. Right? He was there
yeah,
He
as well.
did. So I'm going to come at this at a little different angle. We Pittsburgh Steeler fans are spoiled, right?
yeah,
We
yeah,
we
yeah.
we the Cowboys, a few other teams are the blue bloods of the NFL. Were always competitive. The Rooney family, for all of the complaints that are levied against them, always have a competitive team. And we're sitting here tonight talking about we only went to two Super Bowls with Bill Cowher, and we only went to two Super Bowls with Mike Tom, and they're only 1-1. Well, talk to the Detroit Lions. Give a call out to the LA Chargers, or
Yeah,
Arizona
yeah,
Cardinals. I mean, it's a different. So when we're talking about it, we're talking about it at a level where the expectation, the floor is the playoffs.
Super Bowl
Right?
every year.
Right.
Yeah,
And if you don't make the Super Bowl, you have failed in some capacity. And so you've got a guy like Mike Tomlin who's made the playoffs every year. No, almost every year, has never had a losing record, and we complain about it, right? And
yeah.
it's hard to, like, because I see that, you can look right across the street and look at PNC Park and the debacle, the disaster that the Nuttings family is, and how
Mm-hmm.
the Pittsburgh Pirates are so bad. And we've got the Penguins and the Steelers, and they're always, always, always competitive because of ownership, right? And because there's that trickle down that's there, and they do things like this draft, and they might not be the sexiest free agents. They may not go out and spend a bunch of money. They're not going to trade for a Tyreek Hill. That's just not what they do. But their formula has worked, and it's hard to compare and contrast that. Now, should Tomlin have won more Super Bowls? Probably. Should Cowher have won more Super Bowls? Yeah, I
Yes.
think he
Yeah.
should have. But we're there every year. So, like, I look at it and say, from an entertainment perspective, which this is all entertainment for us,
Yeah.
I
Right.
think it's it's hard to pick another team to follow that you can say,
Yeah. How about Jacksonville? They're sad every year, and they get the
Well,
first
let's
pick in
face the
the draft
reality,
every year.
okay? Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's face the reality. There's only four teams that haven't made a Super Bowl: the Browns, the Lions, Jacksonville, and Houston. Okay, so
Yeah.
obviously you have four teams that are left. Okay, now unlike baseball, where there's only one team that's ever been to a World Series, the Seattle Mariners, one numero uno one, and they're one of
Mhm.
six. Yeah, the Detroit Lions probably haven't won a Super Bowl, but you can't knock some of the better players that they've had that have gone to the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
Don't sit
Yeah.
here and tell me Barry Sanders was a slouch or Calvin Johnson or Matthew
No.
Stafford.
No.
And
Barry Sanders carried that Detroit Lion team,
I
and it's
covered the
sad
team
that they
during
that
that
they didn't
era.
make it. Yeah, that they didn't make it to the Super Bowl with him.
Yeah,
And
but I
I
covered
felt
that
bad for
team,
him. You know.
and that was an exciting era of Detroit Lion football.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Steelers. Well, again, I'm not defending the Lions. Let's face the reality. They've had a
Hmm.
lot of bad losing seasons, and they've made a lot of questionable coaching hires. If you ever want to talk about that at a later date, I'm sure I can get into that. You don't have time tonight. You know,
Matt
I'm talking about
Patricia.
the
There we go.
Steelers
Matt
and the
Patricia.
admiration
Yeah.
that I have for them. I was at the game where
Yeah.
the Steelers lost that coin toss, where the bogus coin toss and
Yeah.
lost in overtime
Right.
and all that. But hey, listen, I don't care. The Steelers to me are unquestionably one of the best organizations in football. They've won a lot of Super Bowls for reasons, and they've won them with three different coaches. And there's some franchises that haven't gotten it right. But you know what? All in all, you know what? They're the model for which a lot of franchises would like to follow, knowing that you have so much stability at with the head coaching situation, and that's what a lot of them have to deal with. All the losing organizations out there don't have a level of consistency with the head coach. They go through multiple coaching changes in a long period of time.
Comment section wide open. Ralph Williams here, a special sports corner tonight. We're having a draft summit. My guest is Joe Kuglis, local draft expert, and Scott Morganroth from the South Florida Tribune in sunny Florida. We're just starting to get sunny up here now a little bit. The weather's starting to become consistently starting to get a little warm. So we've had some cold nights and some cold weather. You know how Pittsburgh weather can be. Joe, what's your thoughts about the draft as a whole? Which teams do you believe made out in the draft, and which teams do you think lost in the draft?
Sure. So you heard me earlier talk about the Ravens. I think the Ravens had arguably the best draft, or one of the best drafts. I think the other team that I would rank up there next to them is 101A is the New York Jets. I think the Jets, it's hard to screw up 3 first-round draft picks, and they didn't. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, they're all quality players. Arguably, you can say that Johnson could have gone higher than he did. I think they did a good job, with the picks that they had. They obviously needed a corner, and they got who they thought was the best in the draft. If you talk to Houston, they'd make the argument that Stingley was. But when you've got that, and then you lead in the second round by stealing Breece Hall away from your divisional rival in the Buffalo Bills, you can put him in the backfield as a 1-2 punch with Michael Carter. I think that's something that's also needs to be recognized. And then they followed it up with a tight end. Now they went out and signed C.J. Uzomah, and then they brought in Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, and I think that they arguably had the best. The one that was the most fun to watch was the Philadelphia Eagles. I have to say, I think that Jordan Davis falling to them and being available there fills a void now and down the road. Fletcher Cox just signed a 1-year deal to go back there and likely will finish his career there. And Jordan Davis being able to mentor underneath him for a year, learn what Fletcher's done. I think he'll be a plug and play for them from day one and be a leader for that team moving forward. And then they went out and got a replacement center for next year as well. They got Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. Him will replace Jason Kelsey when all is said and done. And then in the third round, they got a first-round talent in the Kobe Dean. I mean, the guy slipped because of, the injury history and some of the things where he decided not to get a surgery that many of the teams wanted him to get, and he decided to let things heal on its own, and therefore he slipped down many draft boards, and the Eagles were able to go up and I think, kind of steal him at that point too. And then, my hats are off to the Kansas City Chiefs as well. I mean, I hate to say it because they've been really good the last couple of years, and they just got a lot better. When they went out and they got Trent McDuffie, that solves a real big problem they've had at corner for a number of years. And then I think the surprise was the draft, or the second first round pick that they had in George Karlaftis. I mean, this is a guy who's an excellent edge rusher. He got in a draft that featured many excellent edge rushers. He slipped all the way to the bottom of the first round, and they were able to grab him. And I think that'll fill a void for them along that defensive line, especially in their defensive setup. That will help. And of course, one of our local favorite picks that didn't come to the Steelers, I think people were cheering for him to come back home, was Sky Moore. They went out, talk about a deep receiver draft.
Yeah, Sky Moore.
Sky Moore, and they were able to bring him in. And I think that also addresses, the point they were, look, they had a hole. They moved Tyreek Hill. You can't fill Tyreek Hill overnight. They did bring in Juju, different kind of player. They did reach out and they got Marquez Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay in free agency. And I think that was a really important move for them because he's someone that can stretch the field where Juju's not going to stretch the field. And then they got Sky Moore. And so I have to say that my hat's off to Kansas City. I thought the Packers did a good job. I mean, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Scott. I mean, I think that, Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt and Ralph, you'll remember I was a proponent for the Steelers picking Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia with their first round pick in 2020. I thought he would be available. he was. When Pickett was there, they immediately said, no, we're going quarterback.
Yeah.
We're going to take that. We got the first quarterback off the board. You can't pass that up. And Wyatt slipped a couple more down to Green Bay, and then the move they made to get Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson might be the steal of this draft. I mean, obviously, small school guy. He's not playing Power 5. He's only playing G5. And you get a lower division guy with a body for it. I think he's going to step right in and be a first day starter. Does he fill the shoes of Devontae Adams? Again, it's hard to say anybody's going to fill the shoes of somebody like that. But now they've got a legit target there, and I think that's going to make Aaron Rodgers really happy. So if you were to ask me how I thought the rest of the draft was, I think those would be probably the 4 teams that I would rank at the top of it. Some people will say the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys did a good job. They did exactly what the Steelers did. They didn't nothing flashy. They filled a bunch of voids that they needed. They didn't move up their board, down the board, do whatever they needed to do, but they addressed some things. I think that Tyler Smith pick is underrated. I think he's one of the better offensive linemen in this draft. I think people were looking at just the top guys, and then there was a perceived gap between them. I think the Cowboys are going to be pretty happy with what they got of him, and then they addressed the edge position with Sam Williams. So I really think that they're another one of those like Steeler-ish kind of drafts where they stayed where they were patient, disciplined, filled voids where they needed to fill them, and it might not have been as sexy as some of the others. They didn't have 3 first-round draft picks. They weren't moving up and down, trading next year's for this year's like the Eagles did or anything like that. But I think at the end, I would probably put those guys, those 4 or 5 teams, and then sprinkle on a little bit of Dallas and the Steelers to say they had a good draft.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't mention the New York
Okay,
Giants.
Scott, how about you?
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't mention
the Giants.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, they had a lot of picks.
The edge rusher from Oregon going number 5. And then they meet a important need with Evan Neal, the tackle out of Alabama. To me, you got to protect the quarterback, and then you have to go after them. So that's a team that I think did quite well. And
how about Minnesota, Scott? What do you think of Minnesota? Because they kept bumping out the Ravens and kept cutting in front of them and getting picks, and they kept on going up and down the draft, like a roller coaster. So I thought,
Well, they made the bold move with the Lions when they traded within the division, and the Lions were able to acquire the 12th pick overall, Jameson Williams, out of Alabama. How often do you see divisional opponents trade with one another?
And you saw it twice. I mean, Minnesota also traded with Green Bay division for that. And not to interrupt you, but I thought they did an excellent job. I mean, they could have had Kyle Hamilton, and they passed by moving down. They needed to draft a safety. There's no doubt about it. And Lewis Cine, Ralph, remember we talked about Lewis Cine. He that guy runs a 4.37 at 6'2", playing out of Georgia, SEC talent. He's going to be, I think, an immediate starter for those guys. And then in the second round, we got Andrew Booth. And Andrew Booth Jr. coming out of Clemson as a corner and falling to the second round of these guys. And they were able to get additional draft picks because of some of the trades they made. It was bold. You know what I mean? They were helping teams in their division get better, but they got better themselves. So I agree with you there. I think Minnesota was one that, shouldn't.
There were a couple mock drafts that had the Steelers taking Booth in the first round. So, and there were several of them, of course. Scott, what was your thoughts? Who do you think won and lost in the draft overall?
I mean, how do you go against the Baltimore Ravens? Jeez, oh Pete, how many picks did they have?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean,
they had 6 in the fourth round.
Well, right. Okay. So, I mean, the more prospects you line up, the better off you are anyways. I'm definitely going to certainly give the Ravens, and you know what? Kick around the Detroit Lions a little bit, but I'll tell you what, let's take a look at their draft board for a moment. And you're talking about Brad Holmes running the show. But think about it. You got Jameson Williams, who you moved up in draft. Okay. Then you get defensive tackle Josh Paschal from Kentucky, out, by the way, via Minnesota.
Yeah, Paschal.
So you're talking about going after some players from some good programs. And they say in the Big Ten to get Joseph Kirby, the defensive back out of Illinois. Mind you, Illinois, not Illinois State. And for all you Illinois State people out there, don't worry, I'm not picking on you. We're talking about Illinois. Okay, but then you're also talking about James Mitchell, the tight end. So you need another tight end. Let's go out there and get one. Malcolm Rodriguez, a linebacker out of Oklahoma State. Again, another guy who played 3 or 4 years. So you have guys that have played a long time. And you end up going to an HBCU school to get James Houston. I'm sure Deion Sanders must have been loving that one of his guys got picked. And if that wasn't good enough,
Yeah,
go to
Jackson State. Yeah.
yeah, right. And then you got a defensive back, Chase Lucas, out of Arizona State from New Orleans through Philadelphia. So the Lions didn't do that bad either. They had a total of about 8 picks there. But Brad Holmes goes after players from big universities, and of course Jackson State's to me a university that don't sell yourself short. They're getting a lot of bigger recruits, and Deion Sanders has done a phenomenal job
Mm-hmm.
there as well. So I think the Lions actually
Yes, he
did
has.
well for themselves.
Do you think they made a
Yeah.
mistake?
You know who else?
Quarterback.
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. I think
agree.
first of all, they're waiting. The one thing that people have to understand, and on my show the other day, was when I said underwhelming quarterback class of 2022. They're waiting for the 2023 draft, is what they're
Right.
doing. A lot of teams are going to look at the 2023 draft, and I don't think that there are any quarterbacks that it made anybody stand on their heels. So, yeah, in my opinion, it's okay to stand pat, and you can't blame last year's problems on Jared Goff. He didn't have that many sufficient playmakers
No.
anyhow
Not
at
at
all.
all.
So I think Jared Goff deserves a fair opportunity with decent talent to find out what he can do. They picked up DJ Chark, a free agent from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I saw plenty could score touchdowns as well. So, Jameson Williams, we'll find out if he plays later in the year. But give Jared Goff some talent around him before you start
Yeah.
prejudging
Right,
this.
right.
He
Oh,
didn't have
absolutely.
Hawkinson,
I
he
like
didn't
I like
have-
their coach Campbell.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody
Good,
does.
Joe.
Yeah, I mean, this guy here's a team that was an 0-10-1, and by the way, the tie it was at the expense of you guys. Okay, when
Thanks for the
Ben wasn't
reminder.
playing.
That's the
But-
standard Tomlin loss.
Right,
that
but
you can't
meanwhile,
ever
they
explain.
won 3 games at the very, very end, so they started to come on a little bit. So, I don't think they did that badly, and I like what Green Bay did as well. I don't know if Chicago did a whole lot, and Minnesota was wheeling and dealing, but again, you got to go with the Ravens and don't sell the Giants short. And you guys talked about the Jets. I know that the coach Robert Saleh, former Dearborn guy, Michigan, he's bringing some old 49ers over to Jets land. So, I think both New York teams did pretty well for themselves as well. And you know what? I wouldn't sell Mitch Trubisky short. If you can, again, he worked
Oh,
under
yeah.
Brian Daboll as well, and they thought he was a pretty good quarterback. And then you bring in Kenny Pickett. I think it'd be good if Kenny Pickett could sit for a year if Trubisky has a halfway decent year. But we'll see how that situation plays out.
I don't think we'd be having a quarterback conversation if Dwayne Haskins was still alive, because I think the Steelers were going to go in another direction. But when Dwayne Haskins died, and then they were short 3 wide receivers, that's where I think everything had to change for the Steelers for their draft. Of course, Joe, what did you want to add?
Just a couple of things. I mean, to point out, I mean, the Trubisky thing it was interesting. I think the Steelers did that as a sort of a safety valve. They wanted to have a starting level quarterback signed because they weren't sure what was going to fall to them, and if they were going to have a chance to draft a Kenny Pickett. And now they're in. I mean, it's a good problem to have. They've got an NFL ready starter in Trubisky, but they've got the quarterback of the future. Clearly, you don't draft a quarterback in the first round if you're not going to play them. And I think that this quarterback competition will be good for both guys. Whether Trubisky starts and Pickett comes down the road, or Pickett starts out of the gate, or Trubisky has a great season, will really determine some things. And I agree with what you said. I mean, Daboll did not do the 5th-year option for Daniel Jones. And if Trubisky, who only has a 2-year deal, very affordable $7 million a year 2-year deal,
Right.
if Pickett does end up starting, or Trubisky starts and does well, and Pickett comes in because the Steelers want to play Pickett, for picking him, whatever. I could see some kind of a strange, weird kind of draft, like trade where I could see Trubisky going to the Giants, and being that guy there next year. If it doesn't work out here, but I'm hoping it does. I mean, I think the kid deserves a second chance. He got drafted 2nd overall, stuck in just a junk system in Chicago that wasn't working out, with a team that didn't have talent around him. He did, his little mentorship or his internship with the Bills behind Josh Allen. He's got the talent. He's got the arm strength. He's got the legs. But we'll see what happens here.
Well, Dwayne Haskins, whether he was alive or not, I still thought in my mind that if Kenny Pickett was available, they were going to take him anyways. I don't care what anybody says.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right. Well,
I do believe that.
yeah. Well, I thought that they were going to go with the quarterback in the first round, but I thought this quarterback crop kind of was disappointing because you had the NFL Network and everybody saying this crop was going to all be gone by the time the Steelers picked. And none of them and Pickett just fell to the Steelers, which was interesting. And then the other quarterbacks didn't get picked up till the third round. And some people had second and third round grades, but you had the NFL Network and ESPN and all these other people about how great these quarterbacks were, overshooting them, and extending and going on about how great these quarterbacks were. And some people even said it, and I said it, that this quarterback crop wasn't as good as the one for next year. But I like Desmond Ridder. I like Malik Harris. I mean,
Listen, I devoted a show, okay, Ralph, okay, on underwhelming NFL QB. So I knew going into this thing it wasn't a very good crop anyways, okay?
Good crop.
I mean, say what you want to say, okay, and you're entitled to your opinion. It's your show.
Yeah.
But I knew going into the draft, okay, this was an underwhelming class. Now, did I think that some of these guys were going to fall in to the third, fourth, and fifth round?
I didn't think they were going to, no. I thought they were all going to go in the first round.
I thought that they could go as low as 3. Did I think they were going to drop off that far? No. I mean, but that, again, it's just my opinion. I devoted a show to an inept quarterback class, and maybe you're hoping you'll see the next Joe Montana that's in the third round. The next Tom Brady in the 6th, hoping that one of these guys. I even asked my panel the other day, which one do you think will end up making out well? And you know what? I stayed with the fact that maybe Bailey Zappe may make everybody look stupid, depending on where it goes. How do I know that?
No, you said something about Bailey Zappe when I was on one of your other 2 shows.
Right.
That I was on as a guest. You said something about him.
Well, when you're on the media distribution list, okay, for Western Kentucky, and you're seeing these ridiculous numbers, how on earth do you not pay attention and forward this stuff to the different followers I have on Twitter and other social media? Hey, I got something interesting for you guys to talk about, regardless of whether I show up on a podcast or not. And that gives people fuel in there. So I don't know. To me, this is one of the worst QB classes. But then again, last year's was supposedly very good. And what do we have to show for it? Not a whole heck of a lot either. Right. So, I mean, again, the one word that people cannot lose sight of is these guys are prospects, okay? They're prospects. Do you want me to say it again? Prospects, okay?
They're
not
prospects.
Surefire guys, okay?
Guys,
if you
right.
had some real surefire guys, we would all be retired. I personally would be retired in Hawaii with my wife, okay? But I'm not that rich, although don't get me wrong, I love that. But they're prospects. No, this year's draft, okay, I think if Kenny Pickett probably stands the best chance to get out of it well, Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis, well, I don't know. I'll tell you one thing to summarize this quarterback class. They're all a work in progress.
Right.
Every one of them.
I think, I had Kenny Pickett as the best of them all. And then my co-host and friend, Smoking Jim Frazier, he was trying to sell everybody on Malik Willis, and I saw him at the Senior Bowl, how fast he could run and how good he could throw, and I said, oh, you know what? This Malik Willis isn't bad. I mean, I've seen a lot of Kenny Pickett over the years because I'm a big Pitt fan, and, so I watched Kenny Pickett, but the good news about Kenny Pickett was he had Mark Whipple as his coach. Now, Mark Whipple was a horrible offensive coordinator. Play calling was horrible with Pitt, but he was a good quarterbacks coach, and he was Ben's first quarterbacks coach. So, and Mark Whipple was good at coaching quarterbacks, and Kenny Pickett had 2 years of or 3 years of Mark Whipple, and that was great. I mean, it was super. You know what I mean? I was glad that Mark Whipple was able to do what he was able to do. And, I just didn't like Mark Whipple's play calling. I didn't like his pass-happy offense either, because it cost us a lot of games because of it. And, But
Well, I
you
think
know,
Mark Whipple was with the Miami Hurricanes for a while, and if I remember right, Mark
Temple,
Whipple.
and a few other teams. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, he's gotten around.
yeah, he's been around. Yeah, but he worked under Bill Cowher for a few years as a quarterbacks coach. He was Ben's quarterbacks coach. Ben had him for one season, and then when Tomlin took over, he brought in Bruce Arians as his wide receivers coach, and then he had he didn't have a quarterbacks coach for a while. Or no, he had Bruce Arians. He bumped him up to offensive coordinator, and then he was the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. Arians was a good coach, assistant with Tomlin as well, and he was good with the wide receivers and with Bill Cowher and everything. Cowher always had the eye for good coaches. Tomlin does, he does too, but a lot of the guys that he hires, good coaches, don't seem to stay with him a lot, and they stayed a lot with Bill Cowher. So I don't know if it's a difference of attitude or whatever. I don't know. And but Mike Tomlin's gotten lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and he's gotten lucky a few times here and there. But you know, Mike Tomlin's going to be here for a while, and like you said, even if he doesn't win any more Super Bowls, he still has done well as our coach. And we've only had 3 coaches in the last 60 years or something. So I can't say that our organization's not bad. Like Joe said, we're spoiled. Everybody else, every year they're hiring and firing coaches and stuff like that. We're getting ready to wrap up shortly, everybody. We'll take some last-minute comments in the comments section. I'm Ralph Williams, Joe Kuglis, local NFL draft expert, and my buddy Scott Morganroth from down in South Florida Tribune. Oh, Scott, I want to ask you, how's Eric doing? Fooch, how's he up? What's he up to? How's he doing? Your reporter, Fooch.
Oh, Greg Fuchs. Oh, he's doing real well.
Greg Fooch. Yeah, I got his name wrong. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I didn't mean to. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
well, you're
Greg
on with
Fooch.
an interesting group. No, Greg's doing fine. He's doing fine.
Yeah, I tuned into some of your podcasts with you and him on, and some others.
Well, he does a good job. The way he researches, a very good writer, and we're trying to develop him into a podcaster as well. So, but no, he does a really good job. Again, all the guys that I bring on, we try to put a lot of time and research into what we do. And I know, and again, we do a lot of football coverage, but the one thing about our network is we're not afraid to do other sports as well. Right now, we've been top heavy on NFL stuff, but there'll be
the draft here and all that. Yeah.
Well, so, right. That's taking a lot of our time. Right. It's funny though. Okay. I didn't want to go back on Mark Whipple, but since you loved him so much in Pittsburgh, they're looking for a miracle out in Nebraska. Just so you know.
He lied. He lied to Pitt. He told Pitt he was leaving because his wife was sick, and then all of a sudden he recruited this kid for us down in Florida, that Purdy kid, for the quarterback. Then he ends up going to Nebraska after he lied to Pitt, and I heard there was a difference. But here's what happened last year: Whipple was going to get fired by Pat Narduzzi because he was upset with Whipple about some of his bad play calling. Well, Kenny Pickett went to Narduzzi and Narduzzi went to Pickett. Narduzzi went to Pickett to ask him to come back, if he would be willing to come back one more season. Narduzzi said that to Pickett. Pickett went back to Narduzzi and said, "I'll come back, but I don't want Mark Whipple as my offensive coordinator."
Oh, okay.
So Narduzzi kept him on the staff, and them two just didn't talk to each other all last year. He let Whipple do his thing, and but then Whipple ended up screwing us. He wasn't there for the bowl game. He quit, and then so I mean, I have no respect now for Mark Whipple. He lied to the press here. He told everybody he had family issues. His wife was sick. He was retiring from coaching. Then he takes a job at Nebraska, and then he takes that Purdy guy that he recruited for Pitt with him. So what I'm saying to you is I have no respect anymore for Mark Whipple. None. And I hope he fails up in Nebraska.
Well, you know what? I care less about the guy. It doesn't make any difference. Do you think a guy like Narduzzi can't replace him all day? Narduzzi's a heck of a coach anyways. You got hit from Michigan State. And I at one point thought that Narduzzi, if timing would have been what it would have been, he would have gone ahead and been the heir apparent to Mark Antonio, but it didn't really work out that way. Just so happens the Pittsburgh job came up and he ended up landing in a good spot there as well. So.
Right. All right. Final thoughts before we wrap up here. Joe, go ahead with your final thoughts.
Yeah, just I hate to keep barking at this, but the Whipple stuff for me, I'd never understood the idea of having to run plays in like a substituting guard with Kenny Pickett from the sideline. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. The Purdy thing, I think Pitt traded up. Keaton Slovis is going to be better than Purdy, and notwithstanding Purdy's talent, he's a young guy. He could be very good out in Nebraska, but I think it ended up being a blessing in disguise where the Slovis was making a move, Pitt was looking for a guy. I think it fits in really well, and I'm already looking to 2023. I'm surprised we got through this entire show without talking about Jordan Addison. I know it's been the news
Well,
of the week, and I'll go out on a limb and say there are 70 Jordan Addisons next year, because there's no harm in going into the transfer portal and testing the market. And I think you're going to see a bunch of Jordan Addisons learning that lesson and stepping into the portal, doing this and testing the wind, and seeing if they can get a better deal while they're there. And I would even venture to guess that by the end of this, Jordan Addison might be getting paid more to play college ball next year than the Steelers' second round draft pick is. These guys are going to make a couple of $1 million in the NFL, and if Jordan Addison lands a contract for $3 million or $5 million, like has rumored from Texas
yeah.
to be there, I think that in and of itself. I mean, why go to the NFL if you're not a first round pick if you can make more than the second round pick and stay in college, right? I saw one guy. I think his name is Bijan Robinson in Texas, just had an NIL deal and got a Lamborghini as part of it. I mean, it's just it's out of control. There's
It is.
literally no rules. It's the Wild West, and I think Jordan Addison was the first kid in the pool. I don't blame him. If I was in his position, hey, if someone called me and said, I like what you're doing for company X and I want you to come work for me at company Y, and I'm going to double your salary, or I'm going to give you a 7-figure salary, I have to do that. I don't blame him for doing it, but as a 2023 prospect, he's not a big receiver. He's not the fastest receiver. I know he won the Biletnikoff with Pickett here. I don't know if he's a first round guy. I hate to say that. I know I'm not supposed to say that here, but usually in NFL, you got to look like DK Metcalf or AJ Brown on one side, or the other side, you got to be Tyreek Hill, and he doesn't have the speed of Hill. Or he doesn't have the speed of Devontae Adams. He doesn't have the speed of some of those guys. And he sure as heck doesn't have the size of an A.J. Brown, a DK Metcalf, or even a Drake London. So, I mean, does he go as the first receiver next year? I'm going to guess no.
And I'm actually, I'll be doing a name, image, and likeness show probably in the next several weeks. So one thing that I'm surprised you guys didn't mention, I didn't need you to go ahead and reinforce what I was already going to do anyways. I've got a great story that I want you guys to maybe follow up, on when you go to my YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. If you go ahead and subscribe to it, I'll tip my cap there for you. I'm surprised you guys didn't mention the fact that the Steelers drafted a second quarterback named Chris Oladukin out of South Dakota State. So you start the draft off with a quarterback, and then you have another one just with
and ended it with a quarterback. Yeah, he's going to be, I think, Scott. He's going to be a practice squad quarterback for right now.
I mean, so what?
Yeah,
you never have enough.
But I mean, you know what? It's right. At least we have enough arms, and everybody forgets too. And Smoke and Jim brought this up tonight. My co-host on my TV show, he said that everybody forgets Roethlisberger wasn't exactly thrown into the fire right away. He had to wait behind Charlie Batch and behind Tommy Maddox. The fortunate thing for him was Tommy Maddox and Charlie Batch got hurt, and he was the third quarterback. And that's how he got his career started. So everybody forgets that, And so, Kenny Pickett, I think he may start next year. He may not if he rides under Trubisky for a year or two. Good for him, but at least we know we have him, and there he is.
Unless everybody Green Bay Packer fans should know that once upon a time Aaron Rodgers did sit behind Brett Favre.
Yes, indeed, and Brett Favre did the same thing.
Steve Young,
that Ryan Tannehill did.
Joe Montana. You get the drill. There's a little theme here. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Carrying the clipboard. Right. Okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
Kenny, you'll get your time. Okay, just pay your dues and just sit back.
Right.
Pay back and flex some knowledge.
You know, and that could happen. And then, you know, everybody forgets Charlie Batch was appreciative that the Steelers drafted him because A, he was from Steel Valley, and B, he got tired of getting sacked all the time because Detroit didn't have a good offensive line for him. So what he did was, he was happy to hold a clipboard for $500,000 or $1 million, whatever Steelers were paying him. And now I hear he's broke as a joke because he made some bad real estate investments. That's the story I'm hearing about him now. But I heard he got himself back up in order. He's got some broadcasting jobs. He does commercials and things like that. So he's starting to get his finances back in order. But I heard he was really broke bad. I heard he made some bad real estate investments.
Well,
Bobby
like Ross. Bobby Ross drafted him out of Eastern Michigan University. So
yeah,
he was actually an adequate quarterback for the Lions, and then decided to bolt Pittsburgh. I don't know what his business dealings, don't care, but I know that Charlie Batch is a halfway decent quarterback. And just that you don't have to go to a big time school to go ahead and find a quarterback. In fact, I got to tell you something real quick before that I want to mention to you guys. Did you realize that the Delaware Blue Hens have drafted had a lot of good quarterbacks over the years, like Rich Gannon, was one of them.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco. So I don't care where you go out there and find these quarterbacks. You're gonna the Delaware Blue Hens, folks, are a university that, even though they share the same maize and blue colors as the Wolverines, have been known to produce some pretty good quarterbacks over the years. Just get the
a few years ago, we Pitt played them. Nick Patty had to start. Kenny Pickett was hurt. And we beat them by 16-13. So, and I thought we were going to blow them out, and here we ended up winning 16-13 or something to that effect. So, you know what I mean?
Blue Hens short, folks. I'm telling you, they wear a good
wing helmets, man. It's the wing.
That's it, man. Wing helmets got to mean something there, right?
Yep.
That's right. Hey, gentlemen, thanks for being on tonight for the special draft summit. I appreciate it. Scott, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and your shows and everything before we go.
All right. Well, go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. We would like you to go out there and subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. You'll be able to see all of our shows. Our video are recorded there live as well, like yours are. And I guarantee you'll always learn something. And I have a great panel on, which we've been thankful to have Ralph on a couple times. We would welcome you to come on at some point down the road too.
If you're I appreciate it. I would love to do it.
Yeah, so look South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, and you can reach me at southfloridatribune@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at Tribune South. I'd love to be able to go out there and continue the relationship and contribute any way that I possibly can as well. So
I appreciate it, Scott. Thank you, Joe. How can folks get a hold of you and what you're up to?
Give me about a month, and I will give you the new details. So
that's great. Hey, I'll promote it for you.
I will talk to you about that. Hopefully here before your wedding. So hang in there, my friend.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right.
So Joe, stay in touch, okay?
Will do, sir.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll give Scott. I'll give Joe all your information. Okay,
that'd be great. Thank you.
I have his phone number and his text and all that. I'll get it all.
It's good to talk NFL stuff. Love talking this sport. I've covered 4 Super Bowls, even if the Lions haven't been to any of them. So. But they helped me get to them.
Yeah, there you go. So thank you. Looking forward to working with you.
All right, thanks guys for being on. And this has been Sports Corner Special Draft Summit Edition. I'm Ralph Williams. Everybody have a good night and be safe. And thank you for watching.
See you guys.
See ya.